Step 1, take a hammer to the bathroom scale. Step 2, rip up all the diet rule books. And step 3, get ready to redefine what health and well-being means to you. And guess what? It's not your weight, it's not your shape, and it's not how much space you take up. Welcome to Body Kindness. I'm Rebecca Scritchfield. I'm the author of the book Body Kindness and host for this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I ask that you keep an open mind as we have interesting conversations about what it means in this culture to resist and reject and divest from the norms of health is only for people who are pursuing thinness and weight loss and dieting. We can say no to that. That does not help many people create a better life. But through this show and our conversations, I am confident that you will find your own meaningful path to a happier and healthier life. Even if you want things to change, that's okay. But we have a whole lot of unlearning to do, and I invite you to join me on the unlearning. The tools to help you get started with body kindness are here and they are free. Visit bodykindnessbook.com/start. Give your name and email and you'll get instant access. You'll also get some email check-ins from me. Hear a little bit of the backstory about how Body Kindness came to be, what other readers and listeners are saying that have helped them. And you'll even get a free chapter from the book. The book is available wherever you get your books and audiobooks. I would love for you to check that out. We'll invite you to the Facebook group. There's a self-reflection guide and many more perks. So again, that's bodykindnessbook.com/start. And real quick for my helping professionals, I'd like you to check out bodykindnessbook.com/learn and grow. That is where you can get information about my online mentor program. It's application-based, and we are building a wait list right now for it for the 2019 to 2020 year. This is a 10-month program. It involves live chats, private one-on-ones with me. We've got guest experts, lots of fascinating topics that are really going to help you build out a body kindness practice, whether you do counseling, coaching, training, as long as you're a helping professional. This includes educators too, especially if you're in physical ed or health ed. I really want to help you learn and grow and help make your communities happier, healthier, stronger, and braver. And that's at any size. Again, bodykindnessbook.com/learn and grow, and add your name to the waitlist. You'll be the first to know about early applications and all the other goodness coming your way.
We believe in biodiversity, seemingly in every other aspect of life, except for when it comes to weight. How come worldwide we expect men and women and Europeans and Africans and Asians to all maintain the same weight? That just does not make logical sense.
That was Sabrina Strings. She's an assistant professor of sociology at the University of California, Irvine, and the author of a new important book called Fearing the Black Body. So in this two-part interview, you'll hear us discuss the racist roots of fat phobia, how religion has played a role in controlling women's bodies, why medicine historically and even today is participating in discrimination through the body mass index and making judgments about a person's health based on their size. Fearing the Black Body is available in print and ebook everywhere. If you're new to Body Kindness, get started with me free in a virtual support featuring a video on 5 health rules you should break, plus a self-reflection guide and more at bodykindnessbook.com/start. That's bodykindnessbook.com/start. Enjoy the show. Can I share one of the most chilling things to me? Like the hairs on my arms just stood up. It's in chapter 8, Fat Revisited. And maybe this is because this is like my time, but it was that, but I was really like, this ain't right. That was like I came out of my mouth. I think it was 1985 was the year that Black women were first included in health reports. And you say that until then, like racial or ethnic, like it was seldomly included in any type of medical analyses. And I was like, what? How do you not even include the people that you're aiming to help? Like that just sounded like racism and an injustice, and yet it's very much true. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, so in the early 20th century through the mid 20th century, there was this idea that we needed to reform women, but the women that they wanted to reform were white women, because the idea was that we are trying to create the best possible mothers for our nation. And if that's the goal, they're not focused so much on women of color, right? So women of color are the people that they're trying to prevent from reproducing. And there's fantastic work on this by a number of authors, but I'll just mention Dorothy Roberts in Killing the Black Body.
Okay.
So all of the ways throughout the 20th century that they have tried to sterilize Black women to prevent them from reproducing. So it wasn't until the 1980s in which a Democratic Congress was actually starting to notice that there were tremendous health disparities according to race and ethnicity. And so they thought, we need to figure out why it is that minorities, as they would have been called at the time, are experiencing many more negative health outcomes in this country than white Americans. Right. And so it wasn't until after the civil rights movement and the feminist movement that people became much more invested and interested in trying to figure out why it is that people of color have worse health outcomes. So this is part of the reason why for a number of years in the medical establishment, very little was known about what was happening in low income and marginalized communities.
And can you share, whether it was in the book or not, what just any sort of like, what did we come to find out about disparities? I know it was only in the last couple of years where I've been able to learn and read that experienced oppression, experienced racism impacts a person on the cellular level.
Yes, and there are just so many factors that contribute to health outcomes, which makes the focus on weight all the more egregious. Because one of the things, as I point out in the book, one of the consequences of them now deciding that they're going to shift their focus from largely white populations of color, try to figure out, well, what is causing poorer health outcomes, was that they thought, or they found rather, oh, well, their BMIs are elevated, so it must be weight. We'll tell them to lose weight, right? But in reality, there are so many factors, in addition to the food security issues that I mentioned previously, although I did not mention that communities of color, low-income communities, female-headed households are far more likely to experience food insecurity than more middle-class, wealthier, or whiter communities. And so when we look at all of the factors that are contributing to health disparities, stress is a major component. Poverty, lack of access to safe drinking water and healthy food. It's such a compounding number of things. And I think that a number of public health scholars have did a fantastic job being able to articulate the ways in which maybe one or two of these things might contribute to worse health outcomes. But the difficulty is that it's such a conglomeration of factors that are like embedded that it's very difficult to be able to say, if we change one thing, then we will change the entire system, unless the one thing that we are changing is fundamentally trying to eradicate poverty. Right.
Yeah, I can fully support that. And even, again, going back to, everything's going to get solved if we could just get your weight under control, as if weight is inherently controllable and even unhealthy, which brings me to the concept of like, quote, normal weight. And we mentioned the BMI, right? The BS measure of inaccuracy, I like to call it. You talk about in the book, it did not come from medicine. So first of all, normal weight led to weight tables, led to the BMI, and it didn't even come from medicine. And this is, I want you to share the backstory, but I will tell you that I'm working with a teen client now who is active. So like still growing teen, active, athletic, female, and she has a gym membership. And we had a couple getting to know you sessions, just talking about eating patterns and, wants to lose weight, to look good in the prom dress, just all the things, right? The like your heart. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she's like, yeah, so, I want to talk to you about something because I went to the gym and this was included in the membership and here's my BMI. And I think it was probably bioimpedance or something. But I'm like, we're not talking about like, oh, hey, everything's fine, guys. Weight Watchers got rid of the BMI chart. Or, hey, guys, everything's fine because my doctor doesn't push BMI, which that would be an amazing thing if you're lucky to have a doctor like that. But it goes deeper than that because at the end of the day, today, there are people probably right now calculating their BMI, and it is going to impact their sense of self-worth, their sense of well-being, and likely impact that they're going to make a positive self-care choice after looking at that number. So what's the history?
That's a great question. And as it turns out, BMI is a tool that was invented in the 19th century by a man named Adolf Quetelet. Mm-hmm. And he was a Belgian statistician. And his idea was that he wanted to be able to provide a measure of weights across the population. But he was very clear that this should not be used to measure an individual's adiposity. Nevertheless, when it was introduced in the 1980s by a man named Ancel Keys, that is specifically the way in which he began to use it. And it's important for people to recognize that not only is the tool being used in a different way than its creator intended, but that also it's completely faulty. I mean, it can't measure muscle mass. It can't account for the fact that people who are so-called, quote, overweight often have better health outcomes than people who are, quote, normal weight. Mm-hmm. And also, for whatever reason, they cannot explain to us the reason why the range of normal weight has changed dramatically over the years, which I'm also detailing in the book. So at one point, it was like normal weight was up to a BMI of 30, and then it was 27, and then it was 25. And it's like, why does it keep changing? Mm-hmm. And it's quite clear that it had very little to do with any scientific findings surrounding BMI, because BMI is a problematic measure. Rather, there were a number of stakeholders who would attend meetings with some important figures associated with the World Health Organization, et cetera, who would decide that here are some guidelines that we believe are best. Right. The we believe being outside of scientific analysis. And so, yeah, the BMI is such a problematic measure. And I also want to share a story of my own experience because I, too, am a person who has thin privilege. Although, of course, as a Black person, thin privilege is undermined by racism. It doesn't mean that it's completely eradicated. And so I went to the doctor, I think it was last year, at the end of last year, because I, for some reason, was having some disruptions with my menstrual cycle, and I wanted to find out what was going on. And so they gave me a variety of tests, a battery of tests, and nothing came up. And it's like, well, we don't think that it's associated with, all of these things that we assumed previously, so we don't quite know yet. And, women's menstrual cycles fluctuate. So that was the conversation I had with my gynecologist. When I went to my primary care physician for a follow-up, I was going to ask. Yeah, right. He told me to, quote, keep my weight down. And my mind was blown because I was like, keep it down to what? I think that BMI is bogus, but even by your own instruments, I'm in the, quote, normal range. I didn't say any of this. I was too shocked. Yeah. But I just thought, what does he want me to keep it down to? Underweight by this silly measure? And this is how you know that ultimately BMI is, first of all, not a useful tool. And secondly, it's just sort of masking a form of, again, medical sexism. It's like we want to be able to figure out how best to tell women to tame their own bodies, make them small, make them what we would consider typically as men to be aesthetically pleasing. And this is supposed to be both good for health and beauty.
Yeah. So a couple things related to that. One is I have a hunch that by getting to say, keep your weight down, he got to check his box that say, please reimburse me for having a conversation about weight status with this person. That's just the way it is. That's the system and the structure we have. It's incentivized. That's why somebody at a higher weight goes in and I have an earache or I think I sprained my ankle. Well, lose weight is the answer. There's an incentive. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I can relate on the stigma that I've experienced. And again, white and thin privilege. And it always makes me feel like if I'm dealing with this BS, what in the world is it like to be a higher weight person or a higher weight woman of color? In my pregnancy, I also was very interesting. With my first pregnancy, I saw the same doctor at Georgetown at it was a teaching hospital. And because I felt very protective of my well-being, because this was going to be a time in my life where I knew weight gain was important. And I still knew that I had this sensitive element of how to be kind to myself through this very natural and normal process that, I don't think anybody is ready for, right? We get that baby weight off as soon as you can. And the second pregnancy, I just kind of went to whoever because I felt cared for. Like I felt like, okay, I made it through that experience and I'm fine. So this, I'll just kind of take next available. So I had a bunch of different doctors. And I remember one time both were male doctors, but one time it was like, I was told that I was gaining too much weight between two appointments. And I just gently asked, do you mind kind of recalculating from when I first came in? And he's like, oh yeah, your rate is fine. They just weren't looking at the information, and then in my third trimester, I was going to New York. And again, you shouldn't even have to do these things when you're pregnant, but this is just my story. I was going to New York to walk a half marathon with a friend. Now, I've done 15 marathons. So this was not challenging. This was a fun thing with a friend. But I was so excited, baby on board t-shirt, and so I'm like, I have a white male doctor and I'm like, okay, I know sports nutrition. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to hydrate. I've got gummy bears. I've got this fueling plan. And he's looking at his computer and he just goes, well, if you were going to be my patient ongoing, I would tell you not to gain any more weight this trimester because you've gained too much already.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, and just not even looking at you and all the things. And I hear it from client stories too. And so it's like not, just you and I are having a conversation about our personal experiences and also with the greatest amount of empathy for people who have it way worse on a daily basis. That you are not the problem here. The system is what's messed up.
There's a strange way in which a medical establishment often focused on tertiary care. So meaning that rather than trying to give people the tools to lead healthy lives, they mostly see people when they're already sick. And so for whatever reason, even though people are coming in often with existing illnesses, it's not people-centered. It's not about what is going on with this individual. How can I collect enough information to be able to assess them and then give them valuable feedback about how to become well again? It's how can I best mitigate sickness based on, a number of different things that we imagine might be most likely the cause, right? It is so much about volume and so much about what insurance companies might cover and so much about existing tools that might facilitate getting people in and out that we forget that it absolutely doesn't make any sense that every single person in America would be healthy if they only maintained weight within a particular range. Obviously, because there are many people in the quote normal range, myself included, who sometimes fall ill. So finding yourself within this narrow range of weight possibilities is not any type of solution. Secondly, we believe in biodiversity, seemingly in every other aspect of life, except for when it comes to weight. How come worldwide we expect men and women and Europeans and Africans and Asians to all maintain the same weight? That just does not make logical sense.
And that's rooted in white supremacy.
Yes.
They need to read the whole book to learn all about that. But that's ultimately the gist is, right? Today, we have white supremacy. We still deny our racist histories. Medicine, I don't think is doing a good job at all in acknowledging the racist history of medicine or taking action to move on from that.
No, it's such a difficult thing for Americans to do. I find it to be immensely ironic that there were so many decades of American history in which race was discussed openly as a rationale for how much people should eat, how much they should weigh, how they should look. I mean, everything you can imagine. And yet now we have those very same cultural values, but the racial signifiers, the racial history has been erased. And so people are operating under the same motivations without being aware of it.
And that awareness is key, right? Like that you can't do anything without the awareness. And so just people listening, participating in this conversation, it's an element of awareness. Picking up your book and reading your book, it's an element of awareness, and awareness will lead to action, one conversation at a time, or sticking up for yourself at the doctors, or if you're a person of privilege and can take a meaningful action in your community, do it, because it is going to make a difference. And, you know, we are products of our culture, but we also have to work to actively change it.
Yes. And I think I feel a lot more excited about the future. I feel that there are many more possibilities than I felt 6 years ago when I was getting so many people who were telling me that my work was dangerous, which I did hear from public health professionals at that time. So, yeah. And I think that there is now starting to be more momentum, and there's a growing number of people, in fact, who are believing in the value of health at every size.
Yeah. Gosh, that sounds like calling your work dangerous, like verbal abuse. I don't know if that's the right term or how you felt, but like that sounds abusive.
Well, I didn't feel like it was abusive to me, but I did feel like it was deeply problematic and troubling because the individual who said this to me was a public health professor, and they thought, you know, it's very important to tell fat people to lose weight because even minor adjustments of weight can actually improve health outcomes, which I can understand that there have been some studies that have suggested that, but there have been equally as many studies, if not more, showing that when you encourage people to lose weight, they might lose weight for a short period of time, but they often gain it back. And that is far worse for health than if they had simply stayed their original weight. Not to mention the problem of telling people to lose weight contributes to weight stigma, which in and of itself leads to poor health outcomes. So yes, I do think there's a growing awareness surrounding those problems.
Yeah, that's the clip that all the medical schools need to hear right there. Like, you know, we just can't go forward without an intersectional lens. I mean, it can't happen. I know we don't have a ton of time left, and so I might have to get the, you know, Cliff's Notes version of a couple of things that I want to talk about. But this has been so great so far. Let's talk about religious roots for thinness. What are some of the highlights that people can expect to come to know when they read your book?
In a funny way, it may not be so much of a surprise to know that the Puritans, giving all that we know about the Puritans already, were deeply invested in making sure that people did not overeat. So just at the moment in which there was a growing availability of sugar in many Western countries as a result of the slave trade, that there was also a rise of puritanical sense that all of these confections that are now available, all this coffee, this tea, these breads, all of the indulgence that we are seeing in our country must be stopped. We have to put a lid on this. And so there were a number of first Puritan in the 16th and then 17th centuries, but then later sort of more largely Protestant reformers who stepped forward and said, I'm going to teach people how to lose weight. There were like Protestant proselytizing dietitians, right? And they were telling people, you too can lose weight so you can get right with God in time for salvation.
Yeah, it's what God wants.
It's what God wants. Yeah.
Talk about shame.
Yes, skinniness is next to godliness was going to be considered one of the taglines.
Right.
But yes.
I mean, and again, and there at the time, there are going to be people who that, you know, born this way, Lady Gaga, right? Genetic or, you know, socioeconomic differences. And again, it was at the time we were not aware to that, but it goes to help us acknowledge how far back that goes. And I even still see, I mean, people of faith today, right? Like the Daniel Planner, you know, that was a huge, I got my, you know, many congregations to lose X million pounds. And, you know, it's like everything old is new again. And it's, you know, I find like in the kind of common language, what's so hard for people is like, well, what's wrong with wanting to lose weight? And usually when I'm with a client, I'm trying to help them understand that, oh, well, there's a lot of reasons why the want is likely going to be around for a while, but let's kind of talk about what your life is like and what your thoughts are like and what your habits are like, that's kind of a basis for the work. But I think that there's a lot of people that also feel that they're not doing harm by helping people lose weight because they assume it's going to be a side effect of everybody's habit changes. I wonder what your thoughts are for that.
It's so difficult to move past the entrenched fat phobia. So, I believe that in the United States, it's ubiquitous. And all of us, I think that who are working within this particular field and moving towards health at every size are attempting to combat that. But it is so difficult because it is so deeply entrenched culturally. Mm-hmm. I think that we do have to struggle with this idea that there is a perfect weight for us that's out there, right? Mm-hmm. For me, when I was younger in particular, I had the mistaken notion that it was slim thick. If I could just look like that, and I would get all the interest from men that I might have wanted at that time mm-hmm. As a young person, mm-hmm. although that would not be my motivation today as a queer person. So I can definitely see how it seems like being a certain weight carries with it all of these rewards, because in reality, it can in mm-hmm. American society. But wouldn't it be better for all of us if whatever weight we were, we could accept that and be happy with it and celebrate our bodies for all that they do for us on a daily basis, mm-hmm. letting us move around, processing all of the different foods that we eat, allowing us to breathe and sort of like have a tactile experience of the world. Our bodies are a revelation. Mm-hmm. And if we can simply learn how to honor them, then we wouldn't have to be concerned about trying to gain favor by losing 5 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned being a yoga teacher, and I have to say yoga is something that helped me heal my body image. It was like at 2 different stages. When I got into running, it was like, oh, I don't have to hate my legs. I can appreciate them because they're doing a job for me. And then with yoga, and I happened to get in a studio that had no mirrors in DC. And I think the exposure to the teachers and hearing words like, hold yourself with kindness and compassion. And I'm like writing down those words. What's that? Like, how do I do that? But I got to have a gratitude for it. And at the same time, I see a lot of problematic yoga. But I think what we're getting out of this conversation is you must have ways that you choose to practice yoga or self-care boundaries for yourself so you can practice yoga in a way that enhances your well-being.
I think I hadn't considered this thoroughly until you just mentioned that. Mm-hmm. But yoga was one of the ways that I was able to move past some of my more problematic behaviors, because I was a runner my entire life from the age of 7. People used to compliment me for being fast. And so I'd like to try to show off by running as fast as I could. And then that turned into a form of escapism and also a form of keeping the type of figure that I wanted to maintain for a number of years. So it's like running just gave me such a great sense of well-being on many different registers. And it wasn't until I had to have foot surgery due to the excessive amount of running that I was doing, because I was running the equivalent of a marathon a week.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Lots of miles.
Yeah. Lots of miles, so it might end up being like 2 10-mile runs and then a 6. It was, or sometimes 3 10-mile runs. It was far too much for my body. And so after the surgery, the doctor told me that if I wanted to keep running, I was going to have additional surgeries, not just on my foot, but on my knees and then on my hips, And I knew a man who was a runner who had hip surgery in his 20s. And I thought, I have to find a new way. So I took up yoga. And I remember very clearly thinking at the time, like, well, probably because I'm not going to be burning so many calories, I'll probably gain weight. But that's fine, because this is a different way of relating to my body that's going to be healthier. And as it turns out, once I got into the space, I found that there were so many people who, at least ironically to me, were using yoga to lose weight. Because I had come to it thinking the exact opposite. I was like, oh, well, it's just a practice of stretching and, meditation. And No, yoga has really become, in many commodified spaces, a massive industry, and it's being sold specifically as a weight loss mechanism. And this is not just in the studios, this is also in the public marketing of mainstream publications of Yoga Journal, for instance.
I read, did you write the paper? I was looking at your ResearchGate too, and it's like, it's basically getting thinner and whiter and younger, right?
Yeah.
The images. Well, that's a freaking mistake. That's dumb.
Right.
That's not helpful.
It's going in the exact opposite direction of what yoga is supposed to be about, which is like allowing people to come to terms with who they are, accepting themselves, loving themselves, so that they might have more loving kindness for others, right? Because self-love is the beginning. But when yoga is being used as a tool to promote a particular type of body, then it is corrupted to the point where people are seeking it out for the exact opposite reasons that the philosophy would espouse, right? And so there's been so much work that's been done by, I used to work with a group I still work with them, the Yoga and Body Image Coalition. They've done some fantastic work surrounding the question of how can we move yoga back from its new mainstream messaging that it's a great way to look cute, and get it back to the historical roots of being about self-love and compassion for others.
100%. And, so it's like finding ways to move your body and being open to different ways. And for you, they don't have to be about weight control, and, they can be about well-being enhancement. And like, don't go to the yoga studio that is all about shredding, sweating, killing you. You got to find a sense of community and something that works for you, whether it's in yoga or a way of eating that you feel works for you. And it's definitely a lot of hard work, right? Because what we're talking about is unlearning a lot of stuff that was, it was ingrained in our ancestors, right? And so the repair is going to take, when people are listening or feeling a sense of hopelessness, it's like, I find the acceptance that the repair is going to take a long time and no one really knows how it's going to repair is almost comforting, because it allows me to say, okay, well, what can I do in this moment then? What can I do right now?
Yeah. It's the difficult thing whenever you're interested in any type of social justice, of being attached to doing the work without being attached to the outcome. That's such a difficult but important lesson to learn, because even as I am attached to working toward the end of racism, I cannot be attached to the immediate outcome of racism ending, because it's been going on for centuries, and probably it will be continuing throughout the course of my lifetime. But it doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile activity for me to work on while I'm here.
I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I know listeners are going to love it. And I just want to make sure that everyone picks up a copy of Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. Sabrina, if folks want to find you or follow you, do you have sort of a home base where you like to direct people to, or are you on social media?
Yes, you can find me on academia.edu. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Race and Yoga. And I've recently decided to try Twitter out, although it's a little bit frightening. But I do have a Twitter handle. It's Sabrina Strings. And you might see the one tweet that I've put up so far.
Well, I'll follow you. I'll be your first follower, and I'll include all the links.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and all the social links and everything will also be in the show notes for today. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.